Okay, Dan is the guy who built this business. You have a listening audience here that's partially farm, but partially urban. So what's the difference between an air seeder and that drill that Grandpa used to use?
Yeah, hi, Bridget. So, the difference would be, an air seeder would be grain, soybeans, anything in narrow row spacing. Corn is a type of a crop we want to, we want real accurate spacing. Generally, we're, 22 and 30-inch rows. So it's either narrow row space, wheat, soybeans, like I say, and then to the wide rows.
Okay. So we wanted to make sure that people kind of knew what those differences were in equipment. But go ahead, Dean. I heard you talk.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dan, is this, obviously this is more precise. Does this save money down the road as well?
Yeah, it does. Well, we're trying to make the most use out of a certain piece of machinery, right?
Right.
So I mean, we've taken air seeders and we've kind of made them. We're making adjustments to them where we're building that precision more into them. I hate that general thing people call that air seeder a controlled spill. It's just I don't like that phrase, and so we're trying to take the air seeder, make it a more precision piece of our planting equipment, and maybe for some guys, they won't need to have that second piece of planting machinery sitting there like their corn planter.
Mm-hmm. What percentage of farmers are using the air seeding now?
Well, I would say probably, I don't know, I would guess that 75 at least % of all farmers that are planting small grains, that type of thing, that have to have that style of a drill are using air seeders these days. Okay. At least in this area. You get into southern states or there's other parts of the country that still use a traditional, we call it a grain drill, but I mean, air seeders in this area and west I'd say we're probably at least 75%, probably 80-90%.
Okay. And you had kind of touched on it a little bit more with the, precision in the planting, but what else or more into that? Why would you choose one over the other, or does it overly matter if you're not too concerned about how far apart you're planting?
Well, certain crops are more, let's see, what would I say? We want to have more accurate spacing on certain types of crops, right? Like corn, if you have where there's two plants or seedlings that are 2 inches apart, the one of them, they become one of them becomes more of a weed.
Right,
and
they fight for the same resource.
That's right. And so there's an instance where we want to have, picket row, spacing, they call that, where you've got 10-inch spacing or 9-inch spacing, evenly all the way across the field. Where air seeders are more, there was just seeds flowing through these tubes, and where if they landed in groups, so like wheat and things like that, it wasn't as important. Is what we used to think, but we're starting to believe more and more in that, trying to get as close to more better stands. With the air seeders as we can now.
I see. Why is it called an air seeder? Is there any reference to that?
So an air seeder is what it does is it uses air. It uses a fan that blows. The wind goes through tubes, and what it does is there's product being metered into those tubes, and the air is what delivers the product all the way to the ground.
Okay.
We're like a traditional grain drill. They are more of there's just gravity fall. The product is being metered out, and it just drops down through a tube, and it just falls directly into the ground.
Okay.
As the guy who started it all, why'd you get started? Because if I'm not mistaken, didn't you farm, or do you still farm, and what drove you to wanting to have this business?
Yeah, Bridget, I mean, that was it. And I mean, I still do farm, and we just, I've reduced my acres some, but it was because, at the time I was just sitting here thinking, I had to have these parts replaced on one of my drills. And I just said, that was at the time when smartphones were new, and I said, Google, a stainless steel meter replacement for an air seeder. And at the time there wasn't anything like that. And so I'm like, if I was going to replace this part, I don't want to have to be doing this every 7 or 8 years. That's about the average of the amount of time that these things last. I'm like, if we're going to make, if I'm going to replace them, I'm going to make one out of stainless steel. So I started by doing it. I did it on my drill, and that's why we did. I kind of did it out of, I was angry that there wasn't a better fix for this, because I knew that if I did it this year, if I bought that new part, put it on, I was going to be facing the same thing in another, 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm. And we're forgetting Craig over here. We got to get Craig involved over here.
Hi.
So Craig, how did you get involved with Dan's company?
Well, I called him to buy some parts, and he offered me a job.
Okay.
I do custom seating, and I run multiple air drills, and we're constantly modifying my own drills. And he needed more of a testing ground, I think, than what his own farm provides. So, and I was designing some parts already.
Yeah.
So we just.
Hey, Craig, could I have you get a little bit closer on that mic?
So it just
There we
became
go.
a good fit for us. I mean, we're 20 miles apart. Between both of us, we probably cover over 20,000 acres between our own drills.
Okay.
Wow.
I have 4. I think he's got 2 or 3. So we're just constantly try to improve on our own equipment.
Great.
So
Great.
we're testing all the time.
So what kind of
So
goes?
when it comes to production,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Justin.
No. Go ahead.
When it comes to production and manufacturing, Craig, where are you producing and how are you doing that? Because I heard you say something about metal parts, but I also know that a lot of remanufactured parts are also coming out through 3D printers and so forth. So is there a happy medium that you're using for what you're doing?
Well, when it comes to the manufacturing part, that's more of a Dan question. I'm more in the engineering part, and all of our parts are 3D printed to begin with. We run 3D printers in the engineering office, so we get to fit and see if the parts are going to work before we give them to him to have them made out of metal. But like our meters and stuff are all made in Grand Forks.
Right. And what goes into like designing parts for this equipment? I mean, where does that start and how does that process look like?
I had a question asked at a farm show last week, and my answer was because we use the drill ourselves. I mean, you get frustrated enough with something that you get fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't want to be out fixing the same thing 3 times a day. I mean, so you figure out what you can do to prevent that from happening, or what can make this adjustment easier so you don't skin your knuckles and things like that. And that's
Right.
what we try to do into our parts, is something that I want to put on my own drill that's going to alleviate a headache for myself.
Right. So it's basically from someone who's gone through the issues fixing it so other people don't have to experience the same exact thing. So kind of along the same lines of that, what are some of the things that you have changed or improved or maybe are working on, if those are things you can discuss or not? I'm not sure, but
Well, we just released a whole new line of wearable parts for a 90 series roll unit to ANI. And some of the parts that make ours a little bit different than everybody else is we have facilitation for a 1/2-inch ratchet to help with ease of adjusting stuck roll units. We rotate our pins. I mean, we put some features into our pins and bushings that make it better or easier for long-term maintenance. So you're not replacing them as frequently and things like that a lot of the competitors don't have.
And when we went to break, we were kind of touching on what it is that air seeder parts is, and we were just kind of talking off air a little bit. My first conception or my first thoughts on it was that you are manufacturing the air seeders, but you're making the parts. And someone who has been through this, they understand what it is, but a lot of our listening audience is urban and they don't have a lot of experience or deal with agriculture, or they moved up here for other reasons and they're not familiar with it. And the reference I was thinking of, it's kind of like an aftermarket part for your vehicle or something you buy extra to replace that's better. And then, is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, Justin. So we kind of have the word that we've given our parts. They're not really aftermarket; they're extra market. That's we kind of call that, kind of laugh about that a little bit. Yeah, because they're really the parts that we've designed. We've put extra into, really, I mean, anything, because like we say, anyone can make a replacement part of an original, but we saw there was room for improvement really on all the parts that we made. We just added extras, things that would either extend the life, make it, ease of adjustment or serviceability. There was also, I mean, add some things to this, Craig. I mean, wouldn't you say that? Installation, yes. Yep.
I mean, just trying to get stretch out. I mean, these drills are expensive,
Right.
and try to make them last longer.
Right. And these parts that you're doing, they have a longer lifespan than maybe just buying the stock replacement for it. And I'm assuming you got better performance out of it, and that goes into the engineering that you've done. Is that correct?
Yeah, our bushings are substantially bigger than OEM. We have grease channels to help where our pins stay in lubed, where OEM does not. I mean, there's a lot of thought process going into make them last longer.
Right. And Bridget had just sent me a message. You guys are basically souping up air seeders out here across the area, and I thought that was a really funny way of putting that, because I mean, that's basically what you're doing. You're taking these products, you're making it better, and I'm imagining it's got to be affordable, at least compared to what the original parts pricing is. And what's the competition look like out there for your business? Is there much competition? Are they lacking behind? Are they not following in on really improving these parts? They're just kind of sending out one model and then the next model?
Well, how I always explain ourselves, the difference between what we do and what our competitors are, Justin, is that I always said really everything, there's room for improvement on everything that we build, and we saw going back to when we were designing a stainless steel meter housing for an air seeder. I was like, okay, so I could either just take the old one off, make it out of stainless steel and call it good, or else I said, there was about half of the problem with the meter housing that we were taking off, it was that it was made out of aluminum and it needed to be made out of stainless steel. The other half was its design. At that time, it was about 20-year-old design, and I said there's about 3 or 4 places that there's some, if we made these changes, if we're gonna recreate this thing out of stainless steel, let's take and make these changes in its design. And so that's kind of like what we do. We take any part that, if we're gonna try and make a replacement part, we see what's all the, where could we improve this thing? And so that's what we do. We make changes. Really, there is nothing that's been taken, where we knock the old one out and make the new one just the same and put it back in. Everything that we make has had a lot of improvement made and so that's the difference between what we do at Air Seeder Parts and what a competitor would do.
Right, because you're thinking about the where this product is going to be going and the the lifespan of the application. You guys come from farming backgrounds, and it's we're making farming parts for farmers from people that farm.
Right.
That's
great.
What's one of the biggest differences between us and everybody else is we actively farm. And then every spring we're both in drills. I mean, you can call us anytime and we're more likely in a tractor in the month of May. So
okay, so that brings up a question for me, Dan, for you guys. Do you make field calls? Let's say you've got someone, a neighbor or someone who does business with you and says, I have an idea. Will you go on out and see what their idea is and see if you can improve on that?
Yeah, and I mean, that does, I can think of a couple things right now, that it was my neighbor that would come in and say, hey, I'm having this trouble in this area. What do you think we could do here? I mean, you guys are the experts, help us. And, Craig and I are actively working on some of those ideas right now. Yeah, it does. We do that, and my pickup is always. My pickup's sitting on the headland of the field that I'm planting a lot of times, Bridget. But it's always full of tools, and I've been, there's a lot of times I've got to just get to the headland, shut my tractor off, and head somewhere, because if there's ever an idea or someone's having an issue with something, that afternoon or late evening, I might be out in Montana somewhere, so that's part of my job. Yeah, we do, we do take get ideas from. We're sitting in a farm show a lot of times, and I'll have someone come to me and say, I'm having difficulty in this area. Is there anything? Have you ever heard of anybody try this? We're we're the first ones that I would say would try and say, hey, well, why don't we work on something and we'll come and try it on your drill. That's kind of how we do it.
Well, I know the two of you happen to be on your way to a farm show in South Dakota. We just happened to rope you into stopping on your way down I-29. So I also happen to know, after visiting with Joan last week at Agronomy on Ice, that it's not as though farmers are going to call you up and come to your storefront to purchase. So how do they actually get a hold of the parts that you guys work on?
Well, and that's how we used to do things up until about 3 years ago. We were I'd tell everyone back to pickup up, and that was kind of the at a farm show, and we actually did our own retailing, but then as time went on, we started selling to our local John Deere dealers, and then pretty soon we had something like 14 groups of John Deere stores that were selling our product for us, and so then it kind of evolved into, let's just sell our product directly through A&I Products, which is one of John Deere's. It's a division of John Deere, and that's their aftermarket parts division. So that's how all of our product is sold now. And so you could go to any John Deere dealer in the entire world, or A&I Products dealer, and be able to purchase what we sell.
Oh, super cool.
And so, Craig, one last question for me. And actually, you get to see me today, and I'm not dressed, so you can only see my eyes, like when we were out on the lake last week. It was a nice day, but when I came in, people thought it was a little purple Pillsbury doughboy who just wandered into their ice house. So, first of all, I hope you had a great time last week.
No, it was fun on the lake.
Sweet. And what's the most common question that you get from other farmers, or the most common part replacement that you work on?
Well, that's kind of this year we have a lot of new parts being introduced. So most of our topics this year are based on our new wear parts for the John Deere single disc drill. I would guess last year was more on some meter stuff and lowers. So it kind of depends on what the new product is that we're introducing, is what the topic is going to be, I guess.
Okay. So there's still more to come, really.
There's a lot more to come.
What would you say has been one of your more proud moments? And this will go for both of you, but I'll ask Craig first. On something that you worked on, you engineered, you got this thing ready to go, and then Dan took over and he's got it ready, and you put it on the machine and it works great. What's one of those big aha, or I'm really proud of this, that we were able to get this accomplished and it works great?
Can't say yet.
I can't say yet. All right.
Secrets.
Because that's probably the same thing.
So no, there's been a lot of those moments, and probably I guess probably when the meter was first debuted, it was something I remember. We showed it at the Minot KMOT Ag Days in spring of 2017, and I remember standing there next to this thing, and I always think that it was a proud moment for me. We just took something like 25 orders. It was and I always explain to people I had to, it wasn't an idea really. People didn't really understand what it was. I had to have a banner of a John Deere air seeder behind, because people would look at what I was standing next to, and then they'd look up at the banner, and they'd look back at the meter stand again, and they'd look back at there, and then all they'd do is they'd point, this is for that, and I'm like, yeah, that was and because it took that picture. Because they didn't recognize what it was used for, and we came home from that, and that spring we had something like 25 of these parts on drills. That was probably that's probably been like some of the things that I'm most proud of.
And for those who are unfamiliar with the air seeders, the technology, some of the terminology that goes into it, what's the meter on the air seeder?
The meter is what takes any product, if it's seed or fertilizer, and what it does is it meters, it sends a measured amount down into the airstream,
Okay.
and then the air seeder, the air system takes it and places it in the ground. So it does a measured amount. Like if you wanted to do 100 pounds to the acre of fertilizer, it meters that fertilizer into the airstream, and then the airstream takes it from there. So it's it's that portion. So it's the bottom of. Everyone talks about these, like a John Deere air seeder is recognizable because it's a yellow tank. We've seen them in the fields before, and they all have this on the very bottom of that plastic tank is the meter, and that's what failed. And that was made out of aluminum and mild steel, and we made it out of stainless steel. And then the fertilizer and the seed treatments don't affect the stainless steel. So that's what was the kind of the key to
That's
what
super
we're doing.
cool. Okay, really interesting. One of the next steps you guys will have to do with the business, you have to get in contact with Giant Software Farming Simulator. Have them add your parts into the game so you can put the extra parts on your air seeders that you purchase in the game.
I have been waiting for that to come up, that you got to be in the farming simulator game.
I do a lot of the Farming Simulator. I don't do it in real life, but I'll sit down and I'll put my hours on the computer. So I got a little knowledge into the farming, but not a whole lot. Well, guys, I want to thank you very much for stopping on your way down on I-29 down to South Dakota to, explain to us what you do as well, our listeners. And if anyone listening, they want to get in contact with you, they want to check out what it is that you have to offer, or any social media platforms, maybe newsletters where you talk about some of the products that are coming out, where can they get that information?
Our website's easy. It's airseederparts.com. I'll tell a little quick story about that. That was how the whole thing started. We were trying to figure, we needed a domain name, airseederparts.com. And that was even before we named the business. So, and then once we saw it was going to become a business, we just dropped the .com. Just a funny tidbit about it. But no, you just airseederparts.com. That'll show you what we have, and in the bottom of our webpage there's other ways to get a hold of us.
Awesome. Well, we'll throw that link on our description for our video when we get this uploaded up on Facebook as well as YouTube for you guys. But again, thank you very much for stopping by. We hope you have the safe travels on your way down to South Dakota, and the egg show down there goes well for you guys.